on there, punk rockers? Just putting along here, just on the west end of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. As you can see, Canada is the home of 4-lane to fucking upwards in the city of 8-lane wide interstates, or, you know, we don't have interstates, but, you know, big old super highways, and they'll still be fucking bumper to bumper. Speed limit here is 65, well, 62 technically, 100 kilometers an hour, but they let you do 105 or 65. I'm doing 50. There's a little bit of snow blowing around, but it's mostly just rain right now. And the roads are wet but clear. And just the massive surge of vehicles that come in and out of this area is a large part of why it looks the way it does. There's my sunglasses. I couldn't physically see over the dash because I got the camera's extra wide-angle lens going. I can see it. That's good to know. Because of the massive, like, again, I think a lot of people, like non-Canadians and rural Canadians, probably don't understand what, like, Canadian capital cities are like. In particular, Toronto. Most, like, if you go out west, the capital cities are a lot like they are in the Midwestern United States, right? There's a perimeter highway around town, and then you can choose to go through town and take your exits and do whatever, right? So Winnipeg, Manitoba, Regina, Saskatchewan, and Calgary, Alberta are all, they all follow that, whatever you want to call it, that kind of, you know, what's the word I'm looking for here? They all follow that mold, I guess. Toronto, due to location, I think in large part, doesn't have that. Toronto is against the lake, right? And I'm in the Greater Toronto area. We're not even just talking about the city of Toronto itself. The whole Toronto area, the lake is on the south side, right? So as the roads go east and west, what used to be the case was Highway 401 was your bypass, right? So you can only get a bypass on one side of the city because the other side is the lake. So you would, you know, stay on the north end of Toronto and take your exits to go in. But as the city has grown exponentially, it's enveloped and moved farther north of the 401. And, you know, infrastructure has increased in general all around. So now Highway 401 effectively, I mean, it still technically goes through the north end of Toronto, but it goes right through the center of the Greater Toronto area. So now it's not a bypass perimeter highway anymore. You're going right through the fucking city. So it gets very full of cars. Canada, I guess the province of Ontario, built a bypass highway but made it a toll road. And I don't know what the deal was, but the toll company is a Spanish-owned, I don't know the name of the company, but it's a Spanish-owned company. So the toll money paid on that toll road doesn't go into it doesn't go back into the Canadian economy. Like, the only thing it does is the money that goes to paying for the maintenance of the road. But everything extra goes to this Spanish business. So, you know, a lot of people won't use it on principle because it's not Canadian, right? I have used it on occasion, never in a semi-truck. It is far too expensive in a truck. Like, from one end to the other, I think now is somewhere around 65, almost 70 miles, and it costs $130. I'm not doing that. Right? Most guys in trucks, unless they have an en route or a 407 pass, don't do it. Right? And that's only just, that means their boss pays for that fucking $137 toll bill, not them. It is also, as a commercial vehicle, I think there's a weight limit, but it's basically any commercial vehicle must have a toll pass, or they're not allowed to be on that road. So you can't, you know, if your boss doesn't provide you one, you're not going on the road in a commercial vehicle. So why the fuck would you leave that stretched out? That's just kind of fucking silly. Like, unless he's, no, because he just made it hard. Unless he can't get it closed. Make life fucking hard on himself and that shit. anyways, I figured I would just do a little filming because I'm a little bored. The weather's not too terrible. Like, you know, I don't suspect I'm gonna be filming myself running into a fucking like off the road or anything. I might come up on a wreck or something like that. That, you know, that is just part of the nature of the job, right? I think most of the dangerous driving that was being done around me is on the 400 towards, like, up north towards Barrie, where the road is, like, you can't see the road anymore because it's just covered in thick, wet snow. I guess I'll start this story with a warning, and this is like this. I don't mean this with malice or as an insult. I genuinely mean this, like, sincerely. If you are afraid to drive in bad weather, right, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that, right? But if driving in bad weather makes you nervous and makes you panic, don't drive in it. For the fucking Alliance, I guess they're fucking not Alliance and Villains to change everything here. Because people who are nervous and panicky drive erratically. And where I was earlier, again, this isn't so bad because the roads are still just wet. But where I was up earlier, I said it's a 3-lane highway, super highway, I guess, and you can't see the road. Like, it's just a fucking mess. And it's snowing like a son of a bitch, and it's windy, and, you know, the traffic is doing pretty much half the speed limit. A woman passed. There was a plumber, like, you know, whatever you want to call it, a plumber's van next to me, like, you know, just kind of like a Ford or Chevy van with supplies and stuff in the back, and a woman in a black SUV with no lights on. And again, this one I find funny because in Canada, it's a legal requirement that all vehicles have daytime running lights, right? Which means your tail lights are on all the time as well. She didn't have any lights on. Cut him off without a turn signal, and then started to slow down. He immediately started to fishtail, and he got a hold of it. She sped up a little bit and then applied the brakes and cut in front of me. This time she did use her blinker. I began to slide a little bit, right? So she started to accelerate away, and I got her under control. We were good to go. And I don't know, a mile and a half later, she hit the brakes again to take an exit, puts her right blinker on, slows way down. And, like, again, she's not that far ahead of me. Like, she's, you know, not this truck right in front of me, but maybe the truck in front of him, which looks farther away on the camera than what it is because I've got the wide angle going. But she just stomps on the fucking brakes, right? So I start fucking sliding again. And I'm like, okay, well, it is what it is. Like, she's getting off the exit anyways. I'll let off the brakes and straighten out. As soon as I let off the brakes and, you know, I stop, you know, slowing down, she turns her blinker off and fucking floors it and tries to get back in the fucking lane in front of me. But now she's fucking spinning because she's lost so much speed. So I immediately start fucking hitting the brakes and sliding again. Luckily, the guy next to me saw what was happening. He moved over to the far left lane, and I dove in the fucking right lane. And of course, I blasted the horn and gave her the fingers I went by, but she's just white knuckle gripping the steering wheel. She's fucking petrified. Don't be driving if you're that fucking terrified, because you do things like that. You make dangerous maneuvers. And again, it's a shit situation, but, like, if I hadn't been able to move over, like, that lady's gonna fucking get run into. Like, I'm not gonna fucking fly off the bridge or fucking into the ditch and die because she's an idiot. I'm gonna fucking plow right into the back of her, and we'll sort out who's at fault later. But, you know, it would not come to that if she wasn't driving so erratically. And again, I'm certain she's not going around decided that, oh, the weather's bad, I'm going to start fucking with people. She's not intentionally fucking with people. She's fucking petrified. Fucking this all suck. Fucking roads, everyone's doing the fucking speed limit. Now we're going to go down to that, the fucking speed limit. This car's going to fucking slow the fuck down. Puts a big fucking pile of fucking vehicles there. Nobody wants to move left. Oh, this guy's going to let me go. That's fucking nice. Oh, fucking pal. Thanks, buddy. Not all four-wheelers are bad. And I mean, again, most of them aren't, right? It's like I said, it's this. I'm sure this lady wasn't a malicious, you know, nasty person or anything, but she was fucking terrified. But whatever she's out on the road doing, she feels is important enough that she's gonna risk it. And, you know, she's putting everybody else at risk. Give them a little wave here. I always forget I gotta start waves early with the cars because they won't see me out the side window. They're gonna see it out the front window. And again, like I was fucking a little bit frazzled. I pulled into the nearest fucking service plaza. I just fucking went and grabbed a drink and sat for a minute because I was like angry as well as fucking, you know, stressed, because it was like, it's not like this up here where, you know, brake check, hit the brakes and come to a stop. It was fucking truck starts fishtailing, and you know, I'm not going to stop in time to avoid hitting this lady, right? So she's either I gotta move or she's gotta move, right? That's always a scary situation to me, right? This is nothing, right? This is, again, there's probably a plow in the fucking right lane here again, just screwing everybody up. We'll find out when we get to here. Another thing in Canada, nobody uses a CB. I see these on 19, the volume's up pretty high, but not a peep. There's a distinctly large subset of, best way to word it, I was going to say super truckers or like new school truckers, but that's wrong. It's Canadian trucking has a very large immigrant population. And most of them, you know, English isn't particularly easy for them. So a lot of guys don't run CB radios because they're not really capable of understanding nor contributing to the CB radio. But what you get is that, you know, most people don't really communicate. Right? There should have been somebody saying it was a brake check, but there wasn't. Right? It's just a guy hit the shoulder here, burner, down. Two of them? Did they fucking hit each other? Well, there must have been a bit of a fucking fender bender. There's just three of them over here. None of them look damaged, but what are you gonna do? I appreciate your letting me know here. Again, there are, like, because visibility sucks, wrecks are happening, right? And again, as soon as you get over the white line, it's a sloppy shit show, so people might be getting sucked in a little bit. And again, I mean, like I said, nobody's immune to panicking on the road. Like, I'm certainly not. I fucking did, right? But again, I go and take a breather instead of letting myself keep getting more and more wound up, right? But again, most people out here are pretty, most of the drivers, like I have a fair amount of faith in most of the truck drivers out here, even though, like, a lot of people will inherently look at a guy, you know, especially if he's from India or, you know, any sort of Middle Eastern country, and immediately dismiss him as a fucking idiot. That's not the case. I watched the guy fucking this morning when I pulled in to get my trailer. I had to pick it up at the yard. Like, normally I go to the company's yard, my company's yard, to pick up my trailer. This time I grabbed it from where we, like, our main supplier that we haul freight out to the States with. And like, a guy was in ahead of me, so I went in and checked in, and just after him, and he opened his doors, and just one shot fucking blindsided on the dog. And again, it's an older Sikh Indian guy, so he's got the turban and the big beard, and, you know, not the greatest English, but that motherfucker one shot of that dirty old International blindsided into that fucking door. And it is tight there. I had a fuck of a time getting in there, and I fucking pulled a bullshit 3-point turn on that property to put it on my left to back into a dock, right? So nobody can say that them fucking guys don't know how to drive, you know, when they've got the experience level that any other driver at his experience level would have, right? Just because he's from India doesn't inherently make him a bad driver. But there are a lot of guys out here with a very large lack of experience, right? The vast majority of immigrant truck drivers in Canada are young people, right? They're guys that are, you know, mid-20s, like just old enough to cross into the States, which is usually 25, right? And they're new at the job. So it ends up being a bad combination for, like, having a wealth of knowledge to go back on in a situation, right? Most situations are new. And again, like, that's no different than anybody else. It's just, you know, sometimes what a guy will go to is, you know, what I went to when I first started driving was what I knew from driving a car. Well, I've driven a car in North America my whole life. So my knowledge of driving laws in North America come from actually driving in North America, even if it wasn't driving a commercial vehicle. For some of these guys, their knowledge of driving a commercial vehicle, or what, like, the pool of knowledge they're going to pull from, is the knowledge of driving a car in India,
or a motorcycle in India. Well, again, the rules of the road, and I've got a few Indian friends that go back to India every once in a while, and they say the same thing. Like, the rules of the road are very, very different over there, and they're more like fucking guidelines than actual rules, right? That's, now again, there's differences, like, nobody gets wound up when somebody takes right of way. If somebody's in front, he has right of way, and he just gets it. And there's no, you don't get somebody angry because, oh, you fucking, you know, you cucked them a little bit by taking their right of way or something, that they fucking decide to chase you down and fucking run you off the road or some shit. But, you know, again, it's no different than if I went to drive there. Like, my driving habits would clash with the way things are over there, and I would be seen as a problem on the roads, right? Because I'm not working with the way the rules are over there. And again, some of it's lack of education. Like, there was a popular video on YouTube where a guy, I can't remember exactly who it was. The guy, I think the guy didn't know how to slide his tandems. And it was in Canada. You could very much tell the guy filming was Canadian. And again, it was an Indian guy that didn't know how to slide his tandems. The guy was filming it, and he taught him how to do it, but he was, you know, kind of giving the guy shit for not knowing how to slide his tandems. But again, to the guy filming's credit, like, he didn't just tear into the driver, right? I think he was more mad that, you know, somebody had put that driver on the road without any knowledge of how to slide his fucking tandems. When that's something that, you know, when you're hauling, like the type of freight that I'm hauling now, you do it quite a bit. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't. Like, I'm typically very light. So, like, I've had to haul loads that are like 3,000 or 4,000 pounds, right? So where your tandems are makes zero difference, unless a state requires them for a certain length law. Like, California requires it's the center point between your tandems must be 40 feet or 41 feet from the kingpin of your trailer, right? So you pretty much slide your tandems right to the fucking front, and that's how you drive around California. I think they still think that California is tight. California is actually not that bad to navigate through, right? Maybe if I was in downtown LA, but I don't go to downtown LA or San Francisco, and I think most people don't anymore anyways, right? Their mindset is, well, back in the day when trailers were 40 feet long, the tandems were at the back, so that way, if your tandems are there, all the intersections are made for trucks that are that length. Like, I get why California does it, and it's not, you know, it's not a, how do I put it? It's not so necessary anymore, but they're doing it for the protection of truck drivers, because, you know, if you go in there with your tandems to the back and you do end up in an area that's still kind of designed around 40-foot long trailers, you're fucked, right? So by making everybody put their trailer tandems at 40 feet, it effectively guarantees that you'll be able to get your truck where you need it to go, right? I mean, it doesn't always work that way, because there are always going to be weird fucking tight shitholes, but, you know, for the most part, that's the idea behind it. A lot of people think it's some sort of weird fucking weight law thing, and no, it's just California acknowledges that there are still parts of the country or parts of the state that are built, you know, are like road systems that were designed, you know, earlier than the 80s. So there are, you know, they're designed with a whole fucking combination vehicle of like 50 to 60 feet, truck and trailer, where I'm fucking like 75, almost 80 feet long right now, right? So you know, again, that's all it is. It's just to make you more maneuverable. But because I'm light, I tend to like them there anyways. It just makes it easier to take turns and stuff. Like, I'm nowhere near the front now. My tandems are kind of in the middle of their track length. Just because that's the way they were where I picked the trailer up. And I haven't had a chance to weigh the load yet. And because I picked this load up from the shipper rather than our yard, I didn't get all the normal paperwork with it. Like, normally I get a sheet that has the delivery locations, which I don't need. I've only got one. Like, it's a straight load. I don't have multiple drops. But it also includes the total weight of the freight. So I didn't get that. And there's individual weights for all the different items on the bill of lading, but nothing for no totals. So I haven't weighed the trailer yet, so I'm not going to fuck around with the axles until I weigh the trailer. With the tandems where they are, I'm well under my weight on my suspension gauge. So, like, for people who may not know,
suspension gauge at about 60 psi is right around 34,000 pounds on the trail on the drives. That's the gauge for the drives. So you really just don't want it over 60 psi. And I'm, as you can see there, pretty far under. So I'm pretty sure that again it's maybe a 14 or 15,000 pound load at most, which is fine by me. It's enough weight that I'm not gonna get fucking blown off the road, but it's light enough that I'm also not gonna fucking make the truck work too hard. And I won't have to worry too much about speeding up and slowing down in this shit. Like I said, because it'll be, I suspect, pretty much the entirety of my trip, because it sounds like at the very least the weather's like this all the way to the border with the U.S. And it's a lot of truck traffic. You guys are all headed to the border of the U.S. I'll be doing a lot of like park braking and coming to stops here, or near stops. So that's fine. Again, I have a fair amount of time. My delivery is Friday and my reload is Friday. It's Tuesday now, so if I were to leave tomorrow morning, I'd still have time, like a decent amount of time to get there, but I'd be a little bit more in a rush. Like if something bad happened, like the roads were closed or something, I'd be in trouble. But because I'm leaving today, I've got, however far I get today, is a benefit no matter what. Caution disc brakes, 30% shorter. I mean, that all depends on how fucking hard you push the pedal. That's a bit silly. I'm willing to bet one of these fucking lanes is closed over here. Probably somebody on the shoulder or plow again. Probably plows. Because they'll run 3 plows and take them all 3 lanes, because you're not supposed to pass the plow. Now again, you're also, it's also not the plows, it's also the plow. You can't blame it on the plow if you're fucking late because you got stuck behind one, so sometimes you just gotta pass the plow. But I was also going to do a little bit of talking in this video about my potential future. So I finally got my taxes done, which I'm a chronic procrastinator, and I have a reasonable list of what's the word? What's the best way to word it? Like I've got multiple like mental issues. None of them are obviously like I guess they're not intellectual. They're behavioral or psychological. I'm on the autism spectrum, which makes it a little hard to. I find it makes. I mean, I've always been like socially awkward until the last couple of years. I kind of taught myself how to be. I don't want to use the word an alpha in a conversation, but I taught myself to be a socially dominant person. So I'm quite good at making friends, and I've got a lot of friend groups that are actually centered around me. But I like my alone time, and I get very irritated, and like I'm quick to, not anger per se, but I'm quick to get annoyed when people want my time, like they start bugging me for attention. And usually the result is I stop talking to them for a while just because I just need a break. Most people don't like that. Obviously, I've had a few friends that have been really hurt by that, and it's like, it's just, I need a break. I need a break from you. That's all it is. It's not that I hate you. I need a break from you, right? I've got one friend right now that's been, well, 2 friends that have been messaging me every day asking me to play fucking a certain game with them. I do not have the game installed on my computer, and because I'm currently living at my parents' place, they don't have access to internet, and I don't think they understand. I think most of the world doesn't understand, because most of the first world at this point has internet access everywhere, right? Especially the United States, right? And my 2 friends are Canadian, but they're from Toronto, the Toronto area, so they're, again, there is not a single home in the greater Toronto area that is without internet. So for them, like, when I say I don't have internet at home, I think they think I don't have very good internet at home, right? I don't think they realize that there are no ISPs, no internet service providers plugged into my parents' house, right? There are none that provide internet to my parents' house, right? The only access to internet that we have is if we use our cell phone as a hotspot. And because my dad and I both have an American cell phone, we only get 500 megabytes per day as a hotspot. So we don't have internet. It's just 500 megabytes is, you can play online gaming for maybe 20 or 30 minutes, but you can't download anything, right? So, you know, it costs me $5 to buy more hotspot data every time I run out. So if for some reason I do decide to download something, oftentimes, you know, it can cost me $10 or $20 to download an update for a game, right? And that's just if the update is, you know, maybe a gig or less, right? If I look at Cyberpunk 2077 right now, there's a fucking 17 gig update. Well, I can't. Why did I fucking do that? I'm supposed to that way. I can't download the update. I have no physical way of doing it. And because of the COVID lockdowns, my friends who do have access to the internet that normally would allow me to bring my computer over and download updates are all, nope, can't come over, right? So I can't download games, I can't download updates for games. So they said, well, just download it when you're on the road. So for one, my laptop probably won't play this particular game very well. I've tried it before, it works, it's not very good. And two, like my desktop at home is a fucking supercomputer. My laptop is, you know, it's average. I've got a 1060, and I think it's not, you know, it's certainly, I guess it's dated at this point. But again, I play most of the games I've ever enjoyed playing. It runs at 1080p, which is the laptop's resolution at 60 frames per second on high, and you know, in some cases ultra settings. So it's doing fine. It's just not, you know, I can't run The Witcher 3 in 4K ultra on that thing. You fucking bet your ass I can on my computer at home. So again, it's a, you know, it's very frustrating because they bring it up every day, right? If they're not bringing that up, they're bringing up, well, are you going to be in the States today? Can we play some other games? It's like my instinctive response is, nope, we're not playing fucking games ever again, and just fucking delete them out of my fucking life. But they're real friends, like they're real life personal friends that I've known for years. It's not like they're just internet buddies that, you know, really I could fucking care less about. So I don't want to, you know, snap and say that, but I might need to take a break from them for a while because it's, you know, I'm dealing with a lot of other shit right now. I don't need them constantly bugging me for attention, right? I hate when people bug me for my attention, right? I'll give it out when I feel like giving it out, and I realize that doesn't jive well with like most social relationships, right? Like most people they constantly seek social companionship, and therefore anybody that comes to you says, hey, you want to hang out? Fuck yeah, I do. For me, it's not. And when I'm not in the mood to fucking socialize, I don't want to socialize, right? And I'm typically, if somebody asks me if I want to socialize, I'm not going to socialize. Like, it's when I want to socialize. If nobody's around, that's whatever. If somebody's around, great, I'll fucking hang out, right? But that's, again, part of that. I think the other issue is, that was a bit long. It also, the borderline spectrum, or I guess it is, it's not borderline, I'm on the spectrum, like, I don't know whether like how much of a difference there is between, say, Asperger's or like high functioning autism, as example, because I've always been kind of led to believe that people who are on the autism spectrum typically are, you know, they're not always, like, they're not typically functioning adults, right? They've got quirks and issues that make them pretty much require like care of some form, right? And again, even like on the higher functioning end of it. But I find that learning things is difficult. My father it's very hard for him to teach me things sometimes because I need to physically do things to learn them, right? If somebody tells me how to do something, I will forget. I won't be able to figure it out. I have to physically do it, whether they're there or not, or I figure it out on my own. I have to physically do it.
I just said there bear up there, right-hand lane, kind of snowplow broke down, I guess.
We got a broke down snowplow. Finally, somebody's on the radio. So again, there are things that combine to make trucking actually an ideal job for me, right? I minimize my social interaction to, you know, a fairly small like time period.
Of course, you know, nobody will give any.
And I'm able to, you know, effectively do and learn things on my own. It's a problem because I do go through phases where I want to socialize, and you know, I find that I'm typically, whatever situation I'm in, I want the other situation, right? So when I, you know, 2 years ago when I was home lots to go airsofting, I enjoyed it, but I also, like, I mean, that was more of a financial desire.
desire to go to fucking work. I guess I got a fucking little lane here soon. Back at first. I don't think I'm quite that late. And when I'm able to be when I'm working a lot, it's like fuck, I want to be home, right? And I think that's just a typical. I mean, a lot of truckers are like that. It's kind of a whiner philosophy, right? Everybody wants what they don't have, can't have. However, you still run into the realities of life that you have to fucking get shit done.
And the vultures are on their way.
My job is it's not an easy one, and it's not one that's going to likely it's not one that I can just waltz out of, right? So that kind of brings me again to the topic of this video, which is a topic I've spoken of a few times, but because I haven't come to a decision yet, I feel like these videos where I'm just more or less just talking out loud tend to help me sort of come to a decision. So even if nobody really listens to these, they're helpful to me for breaking down, you know, what's on my mind and what kind of problems I'm dealing with, and figuring them out. I'm gonna fucking put the AC on for a minute here.
Oh, yeah, look at what's fucking driving it.
Here. So the one of the issues, like I'm currently in a state of limbo. I moved in with my parents, and my dad and I spoke quite a bit. Like where I was living was too much money for me, right? I was living in a 2-bedroom townhome in Barrie, Ontario, Canada, which is an expensive place to live. There's no bones about it. Okay, a little slower. So Barrie is an expensive place to live, and I was right up the street from one of the few actual sand beaches in town. So it was expensive further. So I was paying just a hair under $1,500 a month in rent for a 2-bedroom townhome. I had a few people approach me about a roommate situation, and I said no. Firstly, because I didn't want to live with other people. Secondly, the master bedroom is a loft it's a high ceiling skylight kind of open concept living room. So whoever has the master bedroom doesn't have privacy. Secondly, if the person downstairs decides they're going to fucking watch TV, the person upstairs is going to hear it, right? So for me, it was a no. I had a friend of mine ask if he could move in with me, and I said no. He wanted, and I feel bad in all the situations, right? But it's a like my one buddy said he wanted to find a job in Barrie. And I was like no. Like for one, what you're telling me is that you can't afford to pay rent right away, and two, I don't want somebody else living there, right? The second bedroom got used as an airsoft room for me. Well, if I don't have that airsoft room, then all that airsoft shit's got to go somewhere else. And then the second one to ask was actually my sister, and that one actually, how do I put it? It was easier and harder to say no. It was easier because it made me irritated, far more so than my buddy did, because she wanted to move herself, her husband, her daughter, and her dog in to my 2-bedroom townhouse. But it was also harder because it is my sister and it is my niece, right? They found a place. The guy, I was already looking at moving out when they finally asked, so it's not like I really had to, hit them hard or anything. It was kind of you could move in, but I'm going to be moving out in 2 or 3 months, so it's kind of, I don't even think it was that long at that point. I think this was like a month before I moved out. But like I said, that was the issue. That's like, well, how do we do this? Because you have yourself, your husband, your daughter, and your dog, right? So obviously, yeah, all of you are going to be living in 1 bedroom, right? The problem is how do I then, especially because I know my sister will bring it up. My sister is a very bossy person. Growing up as the only daughter, raised by 2 older brothers, and mostly her father will do that. I don't know why the fuck I'm fucking deciding like this. I'm all over the place today.
basically have to give up my master bedroom and live in the much smaller main floor bedroom, so that the whole family of one kid and a dog would have the upstairs. It would also mean that then, because they would spend a lot more time in the living room than I would, then the shared, the open concept or the lack of privacy doesn't matter. I would still get my privacy in my bedroom, while they effectively take over my house. And that was the part I had an issue with too, is that, again, I love my sister. What I've known her for 28 years. Her family would take over my house, right? And it wouldn't be like they could kick me out or anything like that. But she'd start, I need you to do this, or you need to do that. And it's like, no, this is my space, right? And I knew that would create a lot of tension. So again, it was kind of a relief in a way that I didn't have to just expressly tell her, no, I don't want you living there. I had a valid excuse. And again, I feel like in a way that makes me a bit of a shitty person, because it's my sister, it's my family, right? But, at the end of the day, like, the space is, those townhomes, pretty much everyone else that lives there are either retired couples or young new families with like one kid, right? So again, you got the master bedroom for mom and dad, who both work and contribute to rent, and then you've got, baby's bedroom and on the whatever floor, the main floor usually. And that's how you would do it. But like I said, it was too much space for me, but too little space for like a separate roommate. So, I moved back in with my parents to just basically not pay that much rent while I look for a smaller place. And I found a few places. I'm waiting to hear back about one of them now. I very much like the place, but it's also a case of like, I think it's less in this circumstance. The building owners are the ones that are also like renting the place. Like, they're doing all the work to rent the place, and they're not going through like a rental or a realtor. Sorry, unless like it's a husband and wife. The wife might be a realtor herself. I'm not sure, but they posted it for sale or for rent, and it's above the store that the husband owns, right? And it's a quiet store. I know where it is. Like you said, I've been there at this point, but it's in my hometown, right? So it's up the street from my brother. It's a little closer to like the dead center of town. I mean, it is the dead center of town. It's literally the main intersection of town than I would like. But the apartment that I'm in or looking at actually faces the back of the house. So it faces the back parking lot, like the parking lot where you park your car, not the main street. And it's a beautiful high ceilinged, it's a little narrow but long, one bedroom apartment. So you've got your main room, your kitchen, your bathroom, and a fairly small bedroom. My bed will fit and a dresser, but not much else. But as an apartment for someone like myself, right, a single guy with no kids, no pets, it's fucking perfect, right? The rent is a tricky one, because really, no matter what I say, it's going to sound expensive, right? They want $950 a month for rent, and especially by U.S. standards, that's quite high, and even by Canadian standards, like, gone are the days of $500-600 a month for rent, unless you're renting even bedrooms. People are trying to rent out bedrooms for over $1,000. The housing market in Ontario, at the very least, is horrendous right now. I found another. It's called they're calling it a bachelor basement apartment, but it's literally just the guy finished his basement and is renting it out. So it's just one big basement room, like a lot of basements are. That he built a counter in with a stove for $850 a month, and it's in Collingwood, Ontario, which is, again, it's not that far away. It's not bad either, and it's $100 cheaper. But for that extra $100 gets me close to my brother, right, and still close to my parents, in my hometown, right, where I fucking grew up, and it gets me my own individual apartment. I'm not living in somebody's basement. I'm living in my own apartment, right? They walked me through the insulation and everything. There's only one wall that I share with the other apartment on the second floor, and the rest of the walls are brick. Like, it's exposed brick walls. Like, it's fucking beautiful. I really, really liked it. However, what I discovered is because the owners of the building are the ones renting it out, they're like basing the decision on their opinion of the people who applied. So it's not just a case of whoever comes in first with money, or even I think a credit check, because at least as far as the application paperwork and email said, only people who passed their credit check would be invited for a viewing, right? So I got invited to a viewing, but it was very quick, and I'm not sure if it was like if the credit check went through already, or if they just decided to, let me come for a viewing anyways, because they know that I'm a truck driver and don't always have time. In terms of the kind of person they want to rent to, I think I'm perfect, right? From what I gathered walking through the house, because the previous tenant is still living there, they're there until the 15th of February. They're pretty much like me, right? It was music, like guitars, electric drum kit, and video games, right? Which is, I'll have airsoft stuff in there too, but that's pretty much the layout of my current house, or my last house was all of my music stuff, and then video games, and then airsoft stuff. It also helps because I'm gone all the time, right? So they have somebody that is happily paying their $950 a month for rent, but is only in the house for fucking maybe 5 or 6 days a month at most. So again, I think for anybody, the most ideal tenant is someone who's just never there, right? I could be wrong, but, and again, I'm hoping that personality-wise, I'm ideal. Again, it sounds like I'm a lot like their previous tenant, and they flat out said, like, the only reason the previous tenant is moving out is because of COVID. They're originally from Calgary, and they want to move back close to family just because everything's getting kind of shitty. Otherwise, like, they've been there for 3.5 years and had no interest in moving. So, I'm not getting the place because the previous tenant was a piece of shit and they evicted him. I'm looking at the place or the place is available because the previous tenant chose to move out and go home, right? So there's again, I'm subject to whether or not they decide that I'm the right person for the place. I'm sure credit will play into it, and again, I mean, who knows? The fucking guy might change his mind and decide he's going to stay here. I don't know what their plan is for that. If they would just bail on somebody, or once paperwork is signed, there's no going back. Until that point, like, they could call me tomorrow and say, unfortunately, the person who's living there has changed their mind. They decided to keep living there. And then, I mean, again, it is what it is. Like, it's a tricky thing because, like, I've spent most of my life paying cash for things. You typically, like, you just get what you want, right? So for me, like, vehicles, like, anything you use credit for were always really difficult things for me to deal with because my credit has always been fairly bad. So there've been, like, vehicles especially, there's been lots of times where I come in, I want this. Well, you can't get this, but you can get this. But you're going to pay the same as if you wanted, like, the thing you wanted, right? So, again, like, when I first, years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, I went to the Ford dealer that I have my pickup with now. This is before we all kind of, my dad went on a fucking big buy-in spree from them. And I wanted a pickup, right? At the time, it was an F-150 XTR, like, it was a well-appointed truck. And they're like, well, unfortunately, you cannot get that pickup. What you can get is a base model XLT, or XL, whatever the fuck, basically a work truck.
Body and everything, got the earbuds on and everything.
At this interest rate, so you'll be paying what you were going to pay for the XTR, but it'll be, so your payment won't change, you'll just have less truck. I was like, no, that's kind of insulting, to be honest. Like, I realize that as somebody whose credit is bad, I'm not in a position to really just be insulted. You know, I have an exception, an unusual circumstance for why my credit is bad. But the unfortunate reality is that regardless of why my credit is bad, the reason why it doesn't matter.
Darn your fucking light, you fucking backy.
There you go. People are getting racial up in here.
Things that don't work. Backy?
Anybody from the Middle East is a packy in Canada.
Come again?
Especially truckers.
I said don't hardly find a packy with a CV turned on.
There you go. I'll just turn that down so I don't get fucking flagged for racism on my YouTube videos. Where was I? So where the fuck was I here? Yeah, so being turned down for things that you want, right? So then it's just, I got into a mindset, like, I'm not going to own a vehicle. Like, so I developed the mentality of, it's where I developed the issue I have now, where I don't care about cars, right? It is very difficult for me to have any level of interest in my personal vehicles, because up until, you know, the last 3 years, I've only ever owned, like, either bought and paid for like $500 shit boxes, or buy here, pay here kind of sketchy deals where I massively overpaid for a fucking junker of a car, right? When I turned 19, I bought a car. I bought two vehicles, one in my name and one in my dad's. I was involved in a car accident 2 months after I bought my car. I was going straight through a green light. The guy stopped to make a left at that green light, and he tried to beat me as I was entering the intersection. He nearly killed me and my brother and two of our friends. And he, like, it was at fault. He fully, like, he flat out admitted it, like, to everybody. He was fucking mortified. He had a full-size F-150 Harley-Davidson edition, and I had a little Chevy Optra was the name of the car, which I think at the time was Chevy's version of a Ford Focus. Like, you could get it as a sedan or a hatchback. It was a piece of shit, but, you know, it was my first car. So my very first car was written off within fucking 2 months of buying it, and the insurance didn't pay the entirety of it out. So I ended up going negative on it because my insurance didn't fucking pay for it all. About 2 months after that, the car that I bought for my father, the motor blew out of it, so he proceeded to just stop paying for it. As somebody who was currently out of work and on fucking crutches due to a car accident, I couldn't pay for it. So that got put in the old debt fucking pile. My dad did get the motor fixed after about 5 years. It just sat in a fucking lot for like 3 or 4 years, 5 years, whatever it was. He got the motor fixed. He started paying for it again. And then I took it, because it was sort of my vehicle at this point, I took it to a Megadeth concert with my brother and my buddy in Oshawa, Ontario. And on the way back, the fucking motor blew again. So it got stuck on the side of the road. I sold it on the spot for $500 and a fucking free tow. And that was it. And I still owed like $22,000 on the car. So that destroyed my credit until basically the statute of limitations, like the 7-year rule, it fell off on its own. But just because it falls off doesn't mean my credit score magically goes back to the way it was before I bought the car. My father had bought hydro and internet and stuff in my name, and it was always because he couldn't get it in his name. But like, if I wanted my siblings to have heat, hydro, and access to internet, it was all on me, because I was at the time the only one of legal age to get that shit put in my name. And my dad didn't pay for any of it, so he destroyed my credit. The problem is that for a large part of my dad's life, I was a liability, and I don't know. I have no idea what was going through my dad's head back then. It's a lot easier to understand him now, and I think his mind has changed now. Part of it might be because I've normalized somewhat, like come to grips with my own mental issues, and been able to function more like a normal adult. Or if he changed. I mean, and he's been happily married now for a few years. I think he's calmed down a little bit in a lot of things. But yeah, it went from at the time, he just destroyed my credit and didn't think about it at all, right? And then once it was done, all he could really do for me was give me money for things, right? So he bought me a fucking minivan I drove around for a year and a half, which again he paid $500 for it, bought it off his buddy who was using it as a storage shed, right? So cleaned it up, fucking drove it around, and it was a piece of shit, right? He put the down payment on a fucking little Saturn I had, a little two-door, it was like a Saturn version of a Pontiac Sunfire, like a two-door piece of shit. And I bought here, paid here, I paid it off, and then it fucking fell apart. Like, I drove beat up piles of shit, and it wasn't until whatever it was, like 2018, that I finally bought a new vehicle. Right? What I'd done before that is I went to a Ford dealer in Toronto, and I finally caved. They're like, well, you can't buy this car, but you could buy this much cheaper car, but pay the same amount of money as this fully loaded car. And I finally realized, like, if this is going to be the way that I can get a fucking finance term through a bank or through a lender, then that's what I'm going to have to do. So I bought a base model Ford Focus, 5-speed manual. This was used. This wasn't my first car, but only had like 30,000 kilometers on it. It was lightly used, and I paid $500 a month for that fucking thing. $500 a month for a fucking base model Ford Focus. I owned that son of a bitch for 4 fucking years. Well, no, maybe not quite 4 years. And in 2018, I decided when my dad got me into looking at cars again, and because my dad did that every once in a while, he'd get me all excited to go look at cars, and I would be disappointed and heartbroken when I would inevitably get turned down. We went to a Ford dealership in Collingwood, and first we went to the Ford dealership that I bought my pickup from, which was in Shelburne, Ontario, again my hometown. And first it was going to be a pickup, and then it kind of turned into a Mustang, because a pickup was going to be way too expensive. It's like, okay, like I can get a fully loaded Mustang for way less money than the pickup. And the biggest one was they hummed and hawed over my trade. Again, the car, I found out that after like 3 or 4, whatever it was, 3.5 or 4 years of paying for that car, I had barely paid anything down on the principal because the interest was so high, right? I bought the car for 17 grand. I still owed 13 on it after 4 years. Like, even though I bought the car from a Ford dealer, they used the bank, I guess the finance company that does their warranty stuff, and I got fucking rooked hard. So they're like, okay, so like no matter what you do, right? If we buy this car off you for say 7 grand, you're still gonna be increasing the price of whatever vehicle you buy by 10 grand, right? So the idea was that you could buy a cheaper pickup because it's gonna be an additional 10 grand on top of it. So if you buy a $40,000 truck, it's gonna cost you $50,000. Ford does not want to sell you a $50,000 truck because now it's going to be a $60,000 truck. But they will sell you a $40,000 or $35,000 truck as a $50,000 or $45,000 truck. So that's when I looked at Mustangs. I mean, I've always been a Mustang fan, but never, again, it was like, well, I'd never be able to own a Mustang. I'm like, okay, well, a $35,000 Mustang, now it's a $45,000 Mustang. That's not so bad. We can do that. But the trade-in, they're like, yeah, it's a manual, we'll only give you like 3 or 4 grand for it. Like, are you fucking serious? So that was a no-go. So then I went to, I called, because now I was looking at Mustangs. There were some at the Ford dealer in Collingwood. I called them, and they said, well, it's actually sold, but like, what are you looking for? Like, we can come on down, we can make something work. So I went and talked to them, and it was a totally different experience. Like, I went in, and they were asking about my car, and it was the owner's son that I dealt with. And he asked me, is it a manual or an automatic? He said, it's a manual. I was like, oh, thank fucking God. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, like the automatics are trash, right? Ford at the time was using an automated manual instead of an automatic. So the car was a manual, but it was like an automatic semi-truck. Like, the computer is doing the shifting, but the vehicle is still functioning as a manual. It's not a CVT or anything like that. And
my brother's wife can attest to it. She's had a Ford Fiesta since like 2015, and it doesn't, like, it's a fucking shit show. The transmission's garbage. And half the time, like, when she tries to take off, it fucking vibrates and takes off really slow because the car is, because she's taking off relatively gently, the car is basically riding the shit out of the clutch, and it's wearing it the fuck out. Like, they flat out said, like, pretty much with those automatics, you gotta fucking floor it so that it releases the clutch as quick as possible, and then you're fine. Right? So he said, yeah, like, the manuals are way better. And then I laughed because his dad comes downstairs and he calls over to his dad. He's like, hey, you want to go over and have a look at his Ford Focus? He's got the trade-in. He's like, is it an automatic or a manual? He's like, it's a manual. His dad, same thing. Thank fucking God. Goes to re-explain why it's better. I'm like, perfect. So they gave me 7 or 8 for it. So then I was basically, I think I was 5 or 6 grand negative. Again, so the Mustang ended up being about 40,000. It was an EcoBoost, so the 4-banger with a turbo, but it was loaded. Like, it had the heated and cooled leather seats, fucking nav, the performance package. Like, it was, the only thing that would have made the car sweeter, I guess, would have been if it was a V8, but that thing was fucking quick. And I don't regret selling it, but I also deeply miss it. I loved that car. So they made the deal. They brought one in from a different dealership, and I picked it up. And my very first new car I ever owned in my entire life was a brand new fucking Mustang. Right now, again, there aren't a lot of people, especially nowadays. There are not a lot of people that can do that as their first car. Right? I know people who have. What was fun was my insurance went down. It got cheaper when I bought the car. And, the payments, my payments went up by $120. I think I paid $620 a month. So my interest rate was acceptable. I think Ford's got 4 tiers. So tier 1 is perfect. Tier 2 is less than perfect, but we'll give it to you. Right? They usually, like, tier 1 is where you'll get 0% if it's offered. Tier 2 is usually you'll get the non, like, if they're offered 0%, you're not going to get it. I think I paid 2.99%, right? So my payment was normal. The payment was a little higher because I had negative equity, and that was it, right? So that car was the fucking shit. I owned it for 2 years, a year and just a hair under 2 years when I guess you find your fucking skinny pillow. You're supposed to be governed at fucking 65. I guess, fuck the camera down. I went to an airsoft game in the States, and I came back and the weather was bad. Fucking car, I spent most of the time sideways, and granted it was because I still had fucking racing slicks on it, but, well, summer only tires. But I also just bought there was the apartment or the townhome I was speaking about earlier. I just bought my first place. And I realized that the Mustang, like, I couldn't transport anything. The big one was my guitar amplifier, right? The speaker cabinet. It would physically fit in the trunk, but it would not fit into the openings into the trunk. Either the trunk opening itself or through the car over the back seats. It was also because I did a lot of airsoft that year, loading me and 2 friends up and an entire weekend's worth of sustainment gear and combat gear to go to, upstate Pennsylvania for an airsoft game was not fucking good. Right? That car is not designed for that shit. So I started to realize, okay, like, maybe I as much as I love this car, I might need something that's a little more practical. And that's where I ended up buying an F-150. And it's the same thing. I had a lot of negative equity in the Mustang, which rolled into the new truck and raised the price up. So my payment went up again. But in this case, it was the truck that I picked, that I got, rather than, well, you can't have this one, but you can have this cheaper one. Like, I could have bought a cheaper one too, but it wasn't a case of you cannot buy this truck. It was just like the truck's going to cost more, right? Because of your negative equity. So you could either buy a cheaper truck, and your payment will be the cost of the more expensive truck, but we're not going to stop you from buying the more expensive truck if that's what you want. So I got a blue F-150 4x4 Sport
So it's got the body colored bumpers and body colored front and rear bumpers, some other shit. It's got nav. It's most like with pickups your cloth seats until you get like the lariats. And if they're not cool like ventilated seats, I would rather have cloth anyways. I'm not a small dude, right? I fucking sweat if my back's against leather. Like these seats are unheated, just straight leather seats, and I usually change my shirt at the end. Like I put on a new shirt in the morning, I change my shirt at the end of the day because it's it's fucking bad. Today's not so bad because I got the AC on and I'm wearing 2 layers of clothing between me and the back wall, but the seats have like a neat little tire tread stitch pattern in them, and it's got the center console shifter instead of the one on the tree, the steering tree. So it's I don't have benches. And it's a full 4-door with the 4.5-foot box or whatever. Like it's a perfect truck for me, right? But I did miss, and I do still miss my Mustang. That while the truck is the ideal truck for me, it feels like just a truck. But that Mustang felt like my car, right? But that's just part of life. But it's that Mustang I cared about. The pickup, it's hard to really truly care about because it's just a truck. Like I bought it because it was practical, not because I wanted it. You know what I mean? The Mustang stirred something in me. The pickup was not. This guy's probably not gonna fucking leave this lane. So I can either take the fucking high dollar lane and go around them, or fucking be stuck here now. Fucking idiots. So it's kind of a problem. This is one of the issues I see with particularly people who are again from foreign countries. A lot of them don't want to, like, a lot of people kind of come to like the most practical solution without factoring in the impact it has on others, right? So a lot of guys, and again, it's typically all people who were not born in Canada. They'll go through Toronto and holy shit, like it's a fucking zoo. Like there's people coming out at every exit. I gotta keep slowing down or moving over. So there's middle lane's easier. Nobody's gonna get in the middle lane. So they'll sit in the middle lane the entire time. And the problem is that at least in Ontario, right? Legally, I'm only allowed in the right and middle lanes. I'm not legally allowed to enter the left lane. So if a guy sits in the middle lane and he doesn't go particularly fast, I either have to choose to try to pass him on the right, which, while not technically illegal, is considered highly dangerous and puts me in a position where I may not make the pass because if somebody comes out, like merges onto the road, which has happened to me plenty of times, I have to slow down anyways, or take the illegal left lane and pass them on the left. And like I said, it's a very big source of frustration because again, we're out of the city. Like there are exits out here, but it is nowhere near as busy as it was back in the Toronto area. But he's still just in the left lane. Now, granted, he's gaining on me. I don't know. I think he climbing the hill. He was slowed down quite a bit, but he's got no business being in the middle lane. But he's there because he can just shut his brain off and keep on driving, and the cars will pass him on the left, and he doesn't have to worry about anybody merging. But trucks get fucked if a guy, for some reason, even though he really shouldn't be, is faster. His ears must have started fucking burning. I finally realized I was talking about him after I fucking already fucking just went ate his asshole. Or the left lane, he'll gain on me again when we go downhill. And I don't feel like sitting behind him, like slowing down a bunch. I also got to start being careful when I merge. It's that type of weather where your mirrors just get covered in shit and it doesn't go away. So we'll see what happens. So I have a vehicle that I like, right? I'm happy with my pickup. They said I'm not passionate about my pickup, but I am happy with it, right? It is exactly what I needed as a vehicle. I think that will change if and when the Bronco gets fully released. I very much want a Bronco, right? And I think a Bronco will manage to do, there's just enough room in there for me to take my guitar amplifier. The speaker cabinet's always the biggest one, right? It's literally the biggest. And there's enough room in there for me to take myself and, again, 2 friends to an airsoft game and load all of our shit in the trunk. And because it has, you know, it's got high ground clearance and 4-wheel drive, I don't have to worry about the winter driving problems that I did with my Mustang, right? And that is, again, that's one thing I do love with my pickup. Like, if it's really bad, I just put it in 4-wheel drive, like 4-wheel high, and I'm fine. Like, I mean, I don't get stupid and drive fast by any stretch, but like, I don't have to worry. You know what I mean? Like, I can drive in 4-wheel high, and I got the front wheels turning to kind of keep the truck going straight, so the back end doesn't try to kick out, and I'm good to go. But we'll see what the future holds. I guess because I dragged this out so long, I'm gonna make a whole other video for what I originally wanted to talk about in this video. You guys will just have to wait for it. So stay tuned. I'll catch you guys on the flip side.